She was laughing when I walked in. That fake, high-pitched laugh she always used when she wanted to seem more charming than she really was. Surrounded by candles and wine glasses and people I didn't recognize. She tossed her head back like she hadn't just told me 5 years ago to disappear from her life entirely. And then she saw me. Her eyes widened. The color drained from her face. She dropped her champagne flute. It shattered against the tile. But no one moved. No one breathed. For a few seconds, it was like the party froze, like I'd stepped through a hole in time. "Lel," she whispered, then louder, "Lol," and then she collapsed. I didn't even flinch. I just stood there in the same brown coat I'd been wearing when I left 5 years ago, watching her crumple like a marionette with severed strings. Her new husband, yes, husband, rushed to her side, screaming her name like it meant something. But it didn't. Not anymore. Because for 5 years I was nothing. Not missed, not searched for, not mentioned. I had vanished. On her orders, she'd told me to go away. She'd said the words like a favor, like, "Please disappear, lol, you're ruining everything." And I did. I disappeared. No police report, no Facebook post, not a single "Are you okay?" She didn't look for me because she didn't want to, because she thought I was weak enough to stay gone. And maybe I was. But tonight wasn't about revenge. I wasn't here to yell or cry or demand anything. I was just here to return something. And what I took out of my coat pocket at that exact moment, right as the paramedics came rushing in, was going to rip apart everything she'd spent the last 5 years hiding. Not even her new last name could protect her. Now, I didn't move while they lifted her off the floor. Someone handed me a towel, assuming I'd been splashed by the champagne she dropped. I didn't take it. I just kept holding the envelope in my hand, the corner of it slightly bent now from where I'd gripped it too tight during the Uber ride here. It didn't matter. The contents were intact, and when the time came, she'd open it. She'd have no choice. They brought her to consciousness before the ambulance even arrived. She sat upright, dazed, her eyes darting around the room like she was searching for the exit. But I wasn't in the doorway anymore. I'd moved just far enough back to be in the crowd. Not gone, but not obvious. That's how she liked me, after all. Barely there. The guy kneeling beside her, her husband, fiancé, boyfriend, whoever he was, looked up at one of the women and asked what happened to her. The woman said something about shock. But the way Mara looked around, scanning faces and failing to find mine, told me she didn't faint from shock. She fainted from recognition. It wasn't the years that unsettled her. It was the fact that I still existed. She had built this shiny new life. Clean lines, designer dresses, laughs that didn't sound like real laughs. Everything she ever wanted, and none of it included me. I didn't belong here. But that's what made it perfect, because sometimes the most unforgettable entrance is the one they pray never happens. I slipped out before anyone could question me. No drama, no scene. Not yet. I wasn't here to explode. I was here to sink into her mind like a weight she thought she'd never have to carry again. And I knew she'd come after me. She always did when she thought she was losing control. By midnight, I was already 2 cities away in a cheap motel that smelled like bleach and old carpet. I lay on the bed, still fully dressed, staring at the envelope on the table. There was nothing special about it. No message on the front, no return address, just her name written in my hand. Inside a single photo and a handwritten note. One memory and one truth. Back when we were still married, there was a cabin we'd go to in the off-seas out near Harker Lake. No self-service, no distractions. Just silence, cold air, and the lies we didn't want to say out loud. That's where the photo was taken. A photo she never knew I kept. A photo of her and the man I later learned was already in her life before she told me to disappear. The photo alone wouldn't destroy her, but the note would. The note wasn't a threat, no demands, just a single sentence. You left a trail that never stopped bleeding. She'd know exactly what it meant, and she'd know that I wasn't just back. I had never really left. It was just after 2 a.m. when I heard the knock. Not the kind of knock you hear at hotel doors. Timid, careful, apologetic. No, this was frantic, uneven, like someone was half daring themselves to keep going. I didn't get up right away. I wanted her to knock again. I wanted her to feel the silence she once forced me to live inside. 3 more knocks, then a pause, then her voice. "Lol, I know you're in there." I opened the door slow and unbothered, and there she was, Mara, standing in a hallway that stank of cigarettes and wet carpet, wrapped in an overcoat I didn't recognize. And panic I definitely did. Her hair was tangled like she'd run fingers through it 100 times before getting here. Her mascara had smudged beneath her eyes, but not from crying, from sweating, from running. She stepped forward like she was going to hug me. I didn't move. "Where did you go?" she asked, like that question hadn't aged 5 years. "You told me to disappear," I said. "So I did." "I didn't mean like that, but you did." I cut in calmly. "You said it clearly, like it was a final instruction." She looked over my shoulder into the motel room, scanning for signs of who I'd become. She wouldn't find much. A duffel bag, a disposable phone, the envelope she'd already opened, or a copy of it, at least laying face up on the table. Her eyes snapped to it. "Why now?" she whispered. "Why are you doing this to me?" That was rich. To her, she made me disappear from my own life, erased me without lifting a finger, and now she was standing here in the middle of the night asking why I came back. "You fainted," I said. "That wasn't nothing." She swallowed hard, her voice lowered. "I wasn't expecting to see you," I thought. "You thought I was gone forever." Her silence was my answer. And that silence made room for something else, something she hadn't expected. Fear. I stepped aside. She didn't move, just stood there staring at the photo again like it might bite her. "You kept that picture," she said. "Long enough to learn his name," I replied. Her whole face changed. "Lol, listen, that photo doesn't mean what you think it means. But the name does, doesn't it? Brent Withers." She staggered back like I'd slapped her. Brent Withers, the man she told me was just her old coworker from the agency, the one she insisted only reached out once after our divorce to say congratulations. The one I later learned had transferred $500,000 into a trust fund set up 2 years before we split. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She was trying to figure out which lie would land softer. That's always how she worked, never with the truth, just with whatever version of reality best preserved her image. "I know about the property in Bar Harbor," I continued. "I know about the fake consulting company. I know which accounts you used to hide the transfer. And I know the vacation photos you posted from Aspen were actually from Oaxaca, Mexico, because he has a stupid birthmark on his wrist that's visible in 3 different angles." She tried to speak. I wasn't done. "I disappeared, Mara, but you forgot that ghost's watch." She turned toward the hallway, shaking, not crying. Not yet, but the kind of trembling you get when you know the truth isn't just knocking at your door. It's already sitting on your bed, waiting to be acknowledged. "What do you want from me?" she finally asked. Not angry, just scared. I stepped back into the room and picked up a second envelope. "Nothing," I said. "This one's not for you. It's for him." Her eyes widened. "You're going to talk to Brent?" "No, I already did." And with that, I shut the door. I didn't need to see Brent Withers in person. Not because I was afraid. That part of me died years ago, but because I understood something Mara never did. Silence leaves deeper marks than confrontation. She wanted to control the narrative, but I had finally learned how to write my own version of it. Quietly, precisely, and with perfect timing. The envelope I sent Brent didn't contain threats or rage. Just 4 things. A photo of him and Mara at that coastal house in Bar Harbor, the same one she claimed was her aunt's retreat years ago. A notarized statement from a financial investigator I hired last year, detailing the movement of funds between 3 shell companies they both controlled. A copy of the old marriage certificate with my name still legally tied to joint assets that had never been dissolved. And lastly, a short letter that simply read, "She promised me freedom. Instead, she buried me alive. Ask her how many other names she's erased." That letter was delivered by hand through a crier to the address they never thought I'd find. I didn't ask for anything. Not money, not apology. Just presence, just knowledge. I wanted Brent to see the same portrait of her that I had stared at too long. A woman who edited her life with surgical precision, erasing what no longer made her feel powerful. 3 days passed without a word. No calls from Mara, no knocks at my motel door. Nothing. Just a silence so thick it felt like it had mass, like I could fold it, throw it, suffocate beneath it. I didn't sleep much. I watched static on the motel TV and wondered if she was sitting in her fancy designer kitchen trying to make sense of which life fell apart first. Then, on the 4th morning, I got a text from an unknown number. No greeting, no emojis, just 5 words. He left. What did you do? It was Mara. I stared at the screen for a while, letting the question hang there like smoke in the air. I didn't answer immediately. I wanted her to sit in that moment the same way I had once sat in our kitchen years ago, holding a cup of coffee gone cold, wondering why the woman across the table had stopped looking at me like I mattered. I typed 1 sentence and hit send. You asked me to disappear. This is what that looks like. 2 hours later, she was standing outside my motel again. No overcoat this time, no pretense, just jeans, a black sweater, and the kind of face people wear when the mirror finally refuses to lie back. Her makeup was gone, so was the jewelry, and something about her looked smaller, not in stature, in spirit. She didn't wait for me to invite her in. She walked past me and sat at the edge of the bed just like she used to do when she was working up the courage to say something cruel. Except this time her voice cracked. He said he didn't know about the house. She said he thinks I tricked him. He asked me if I did the same thing to you. I tried to explain, but she stopped, swallowed. He left. I stayed quiet. She looked up. Why now, lol? Why after all this time? Why come back just to destroy me? It would have been easy to say it was revenge, but the truth was simpler and far more terrifying. I didn't come back to destroy you. I said I came back to stop pretending I never existed. She looked at me for a long time, and then for the first time in 5 years, she said something I never expected. I thought you were weak, but now I don't even recognize you. I didn't flinch. That's because you never really saw me. You only saw what I made easier for you to be. And then I gave her the last envelope, the one with the legal documents she never expected I had, the quiet insurance I'd kept all these years, power of attorney forms filed before I vanished, deeds she forgot to update, digital fingerprints she thought were wiped. She opened it with shaking hands. Her lips trembled, and when she finally looked up at me, she didn't look angry. She looked afraid. You could ruin me, she whispered. I stood, picked up my coat, walked to the door. and said the one sentence I knew would haunt her forever. I already did. Then I left her there with everything she tried to forget. And what happened next changed everything. I expected her to run. I expected her to cry, to beg, to call her lawyer. I didn't expect silence. Not for 2 days. And it wasn't the peaceful kind of silence. It was surgical, like she was buying time. So I waited. Not at the motel. I left that behind the moment I handed her the documents. I drove inland toward a place no one would think to find me. I needed air and space. I didn't just want to get away from Mara. I needed to get away from the version of myself that thought returning would bring some kind of release. It didn't. It made everything louder. But she still found me. It was the humming first that tipped me off. I was staying in an old converted farmhouse near the edge of a forgotten town in Vermont, the kind of place where trees outnumber people and your phone signal doesn't dare work after 8 p.m. I was outside chopping wood when I heard the soft hum of an engine too new for this area. Then the tires gravel crunching beneath pressure, slow, deliberate. She stepped out of the driver's side like she'd rehearsed this entrance 100 times. Neat hair, sunglasses, a calm expression that didn't belong on someone whose world had just imploded. I didn't say a word. She didn't wait for an invitation this time. "There's something you don't understand," she said, not even bothering with a greeting. "Brent didn't leave just because of your envelope." I raised an eyebrow but stayed quiet. She continued, "He left because I told him to." I blinked. "You told him to leave? I needed to see if you'd come after him or me. I needed to see who you were now." I didn't answer. Not because I was speechless, but because I felt something shift. Something off. Like I just opened a door and realized the room inside wasn't empty. "You think you've been in control of this, lol?" she said softly. "But you're only here now because I allowed it." It wasn't just the words. It was the way she said them. She wasn't angry. She wasn't desperate. She was measuring me. That's when I saw it. She hadn't collapsed at the party from fear. She collapsed because I'd shown up too soon. Because I disrupted something that hadn't finished yet. I took a step back. She followed. "While you were busy disappearing," she went on, "I was building something. Not with Brent. That was just funding. That house, those accounts, they were just the surface. You don't know what's underneath. Lel, you never asked." And that's when it hit me. I'd been so focused on revenge, on reclaiming my identity, that I'd walked right into the second trap she'd been setting all along. Not for Brent, not for some new life. For me. You didn't just want me gone. I said, you wanted me forgotten. She smiled, just slightly. Because you were the only piece I couldn't control. And now, even after 5 years, you're still here, still haunting me. I felt my throat tighten. The wind picked up behind us. Leaves danced around our feet like they knew something was unraveling. "So, why are you here?" I asked. "What's the real reason?" She pulled a folded piece of paper from her coat, handed it to me. A name, a location, a set of coordinates. "I'm giving you a choice," she said. "Go there, or keep playing this game. But if you choose the second path, I promise you, what you think is revenge will become your cage." And then she walked back to the car, got in, and drove away. I unfolded the paper with shaking hands. It wasn't just a location, it was a graveyard, and beneath the coordinates, she had written just 3 words. She never existed. I don't believe in omens, but that drive felt cursed from the moment I started it. My GPS wouldn't load the coordinates Mara had given me, So I used an old printed road atlas I found in the farmhouse. Every page smelled like mildew and forgotten places. The air felt heavier the further north I drove. It was the kind of quiet that creeps into your ears and stays behind your ribs. I reached the graveyard just after noon. A forgotten patch of land wedged between the woods and an abandoned train track. No more than 30 headstones, most of them crumbling, crooked and worn blank by decades of weather. There was no sign, no path, no maintenance, just the overwhelming sense that time had stopped here and never restarted. But one grave was different, newer, clean, recent flowers, still fresh enough to smell. The stone was white and uncracked, polished so smoothly I could see my reflection in it. I knelt to read the name. Eleanor Jane Holland, 1989 to 2016. Beloved wife, missed but never forgotten. My heart ceased, not because I recognized the name, but because I didn't, and because the photo mounted next to the name on the polished stone, one of those circular ceramic portraits, was a younger version of Mara. The same bone structure, the same eyes, the same mouth. But it wasn't her name. It wasn't her identity. And according to this stone, she had died 6 years ago. 1 year before, she told me to vanish. For several minutes, I just stared. Something I see crawled across my shoulders. I looked around, half expecting her to be standing nearby, watching, ready to explain. But there was nothing. Only the wind through the trees and the low, distant groan of a freight train long out of service. I took a picture of the stone. Back in the car, I searched public death records for my hotspot. The obituary was real, published, filed. The woman named Eleanor Jane Holland had legally died in a car crash in upstate New York. Except she hadn't. She'd become my wife. Mara, or Eleanor, or whatever her name was, had married me less than a year after that date under an entirely different name using forged documents. A hidden identity. I couldn't tell yet. But one thing was clear. I hadn't just married a liar. I'd married someone who wasn't supposed to exist anymore. And I began to wonder if I ever really knew anything about the person who'd once whispered the word disappear like it was an act of mercy. Back at the farmhouse that night, I pored over every document I had. Bank statements, digital trails, scans of old letters she'd written. I even pulled up our old wedding photos, zooming in on the guests, her dress, the signature on the certificate, all of it. Every last piece felt suddenly unstable, like the foundation of a house I'd been living in was just a tarp thrown over a sinkhole. But what chilled me most wasn't her name or the grave or the falsified history. It was the growing realization that her need for me to vanish had nothing to do with heartbreak or betrayal. It had to do with survival. She needed me gone because I was the last person alive who might recognize her for who she really was. And maybe now she realized that threat hadn't stayed buried. My burner phone buzzed just past midnight. No caller ID. I answered anyway. Her voice was quiet, almost defeated. "Lel, please. You weren't supposed to find that." I didn't respond. She kept talking. "I'm not who you think I am. I never was. But I'm not the villain here. If you keep digging, you're going to put more than yourself at risk. Just let it die." I asked the only question that mattered. Who was she? There was a pause, not for effect, for fear. Then came her reply. She was me, but I killed her. And if you keep pulling the thread, someone's going to come looking for what's left. The line went dead. And in that motel mirror across from me, I no longer recognized the man staring back. Sleep was no longer an option. I spent the entire night going through old emails, login credentials, digital folders I hadn't opened in years. Every file with her name on it, or names, I should say, I copied to an encrypted drive. I wasn't sure what I was protecting anymore. Myself, the truth, some fading version of love I hadn't fully let go of. By morning, I had one clear lead. There was a storage unit in her name, not Mara, not Eleanor, but under a third identity I'd found buried inside a shared Dropbox folder from 2017. It was listed under the name Sarah Kitt, at least 2 weeks before she told me to disappear. Located just outside a sleepy industrial town called Arling Ridge, 5 hours south. The lease had been auto-paid ever since. I drove without stopping. The facility was surrounded by rusted fencing and backed up against a row of warehouses with faded signs that had outlived their purpose. The manager barely looked at me when I handed him the forged ID I'd edited the night before to match the records. I'd expected questions. There were none. Unit number 427, second floor, south wing. The metal door screeched as it rolled up. The air inside was dry and stale, but not untouched. Someone had been in here recently. It was meticulously organized, not the junk pile you expect in a storage unit. No old furniture, no stacks of boxes collapsing from age. Instead, everything was labeled. Containers lined the walls, each marked with a city and a date. I opened one. Denver, 2013. Inside, passports. 2 of them, both with her face, both under different names. One of them expired, one active. Portland, 2014. Burner phones, dozens, all dead. Some still in original packaging. One had a sticky note attached. Use of compromised. Tucson, 2015. A journal. That was the first time I hesitated. I opened it slowly. Her handwriting slanted, neat, compulsive. The first entry was dated 6 months before I met her. There's no going back now. They think Eleanor is dead. That buys me 2, maybe 3 years. But if anyone from the firm tracks me, I'll need a clean exit. Avoid emotional ties, no attachments. I read that sentence over and over, trying to comprehend the weight of it. She hadn't just lied to me. She had orchestrated an entire second, maybe third identity. And I wasn't the only one she'd disappeared from. Who was they? What firm? What happened in 2016 that forced her to fake her death and re-enter life under a new name? I kept reading. Entry after entry, I watched the version of my wife unravel into something far colder. This wasn't the writing of someone unhinged. It was the writing of someone calculating every move, every alias, every exit route. And then about 3/4 in, one name kept appearing. Marston. I didn't know who Marston was, but his name showed up again and again in notes and warnings underlined in red ink. Marston has leverage. If he resurfaces, I'll need to burn the original files and eliminate the low variable. I stared at those words, numb. The low variable. I wasn't a husband in her eyes. I was a liability, a factor in an equation that needed to be subtracted. I don't remember leaving the unit. My legs moved on their own. The journal was still in my hands when I reached the car. I sat there for what must have been an hour, watching the sky shift from gray to something darker, clouds curling like smoke above the rooftops. Then my phone vibrated. It was an image sent from an unknown number, a photo of me taken from behind, standing in front of the storage unit not 15 minutes earlier. No message, just the image. Then another. This time it was a photo of Mara standing in front of what looked like a high-rise building I didn't recognize. She was talking to someone. The person was turned away, but I could see part of his face. Pale, shaved head, a tattoo behind his ear. The caption simply read, "You were never watching her. We were watching you." My chest tightened. My breath felt shallow. I looked back at the storage unit. The light inside was on, and the metal door that I had locked was slowly rolling open again. That door should have stayed closed, but it didn't. The metal screeched as it lifted, and my heart pounded in my ears. I couldn't see who was inside, just the shape of a man standing still in the fluorescent glow, backlit and quiet. I didn't wait for him to speak. I got in my car and drove, and I didn't stop for hours. I didn't stop until I crossed the state line and reached the cabin, the one I thought I'd never return to. The one Mara and I used to visit during quiet winters, back when I thought silence meant safety. It was old now, but still standing, and for once, I didn't feel haunted being there. I burned the journal that night in the fireplace. Page by page, I let every alias, every plan, every threat curl into smoke. Not out of fear, but because I was done carrying it. I didn't need to understand everything. I didn't need every piece of the puzzle to fall into place. Because sometimes peace isn't knowing why something happened. It's just knowing it's over. The next morning I made a decision. I contacted a federal investigator. Quietly, anonymously, I handed over every file I had on the shell companies, the fake identities, the laundering schemes, and the digital trails she'd failed to fully wipe. Not to hurt her, not to expose her, but because someone had to know. Someone safe. I let it go after that. No more looking over my shoulder. No more digging into shadows. I changed my number, moved under my real name, Lel Archer, and for the first time in years, I stopped disappearing from myself. And as for Mara, I heard she left the country. She didn't run. She didn't vanish. She relocated somewhere coastal where no one asked questions. Maybe she changed her name again. Maybe she didn't, but she stayed gone. And that somehow was enough. That silence wasn't empty. It was earned. 1 year later, I opened a small bookstore by a lake. Nothing fancy. Used books, local authors, coffee that tastes better than it should. Some people call me quiet. Some call me a little sad. But I'm not sad anymore. I'm grateful because in a world where people are erased without even leaving fingerprints, I survived. And somewhere deep in the static of those 5 lost years, I found myself again. Not as her husband, not as her variable, just as me. And that after everything is the happiest ending I could have hoped.